Alright, Trekkies and Trekkers, now it's time for the third episode review of the day, Civil Defense. In one of Deep Space Nine's ore processing units, O'Brien and Jake are deleting all Cardassian files from the computers as part of an effort to convert the facility into a deuterium refinery. Commander Sisko comes in to check on them. In the course of their work, Jake asks for help removing one of the old files, but when O'Brien attempts to help, he triggers a security program. Since O'Brien lacks an appropriate Cardassian access code, the OPU is locked down and learned about a worker revolt is transmitted to Ops, much to the consternation of the Ops crew. In the OPU, a recording of Gul Dukat appears on display, warning the workers that they have 8 minutes to end their revolt. While beginning their effort to escape the OPU, Sisko hears from Kira on his comm badge, and she tries to beam them out of the OPU without success, since she also lacks the needed access code. From his security office, Orlin speaks up to the fact that he is also trying to get them out, but that will take time. Just then, Quark walks into the security office and offers his help. Much to Odo's surprise, Quark reveals in response that he has access codes for clearances one level higher than Odo does, and offers to make an arrangement for giving Odo the added level of clearance. Annoyed, Odo asks Quark to leave, but since Quark feels that the security office is the safest place on the station, he is determined to stay, and annoy Odo just by being there. So frustrated in their effort to escape, Sisko announces to the computer that he is the leader of the revolt and that they surrender. With the reprieve they gain, they work out a stratagem by which Jake will climb up the ore chute and open hatch to greater safety that they will have in the main area of the OPU. Just then, another recording plays, announcing that the compartment will be filled with neurocene gas in 3 minutes if the all clear is not sounded by station security forces. As 3 minutes draw to a close, Jake is only then able to open the hatch, and 3 of them climb above the gas. However, the computer detects this escape initiates a counterinsurgency program which locks down Ops and the security office and dampens combat signals. The Ops crew is now trapped in the Ops Center, as are Quark and Odo in the latter's office. Meanwhile, Commander Sisko, O'Brien, and Jake have discovered that their comm badges don't work, and are starting to try to break out of an ore receiving area by using a cart and as a battering ram against a hatch. They finally give up that approach and figure out a way to blow the hatch with raw uridium ore primed with electricity from a nearby light. In Ops, Daphne is trying to regain control of the main computer when her hands are burned by an intrusion countermeasure when a force field activates. The countermeasure also escalates the counterinsurgency program again, an action in which a new recording says will result in neurocene being pumped into the station's habitat ring, killing everyone there. Just then, Garrick steps into Ops, having administered the station with his old but still valid access codes. After Garrick explains what he understands of the situation, the other senior staff decide to disable the station's life support system in order to forestall the release of the gas. Garrick is empathic that such a course of action is the only way to keep the inhabitants of the habitat ring from being poisoned. Shutting down life support will cause the station to run out of oxygen in about 12 hours, but this is much more preferable than the less 5 minutes they have before the gas is released. Major Care overloads the life support console with her phaser, which escalates the counterinsurgency program once more. The recording goes along with the event announces that in 2 hours the station will self-destruct, and the computer begins the countdown. Since Dukat, the former commander of the station, is the only individual who can shut down the self-destruct, Garrick tries to impersonate Dukat's codes and hack into the computer. To prevent the computer from scanning Garrick's DNA to confirm his identity, Dax devises a new plan to disable the security sensors in Ops. However, before the plan can be put fully into action, an alarm is tripped and the counterinsurgency program escalates yet again, now to level 4, which causes a maximum intensity disruptor to appear in the Ops food replicator and start firing at high rates throughout Ops. One unfortunate Starfleet officer is immediately annihilated. A few minutes later, Dukat himself transports unannounced into Ops and explains that his ship received a distress call, so that Tarek Noor was now in the grip of a Bajoran rebellion. While he blathers on, the disruptor continues to fire around him, since it is programmed only to fire at non-Cardassians, except when Dukat pauses it to request a cup of red leaf tea from the replicator. Kira, still taking cover, demands they do something, and Dukat says all in good time, provided they receive something in return. During his diatribe, he baits Garrick into an argument. He requests that Kira follow him into Sisko's, formerly his office, shutting down the disruptor almost as an afterthought. In the office, he offers to the counterinsurgency program, regulations for being allowed to place a Cardassian garrison on the station. Kira immediately refuses those terms, but Dukat asks whether she's really willing to sacrifice the lives of all 2,000 people aboard the station. Kira retorts that she would rather destroy the station and hand it back to the Cardassians. With 30 minutes left on the countdown, Dukat stresses out the officer prepares to transport back to his ship, leaving them to think it over and promising to return when they have about 5 minutes left. However, as soon as Dukat signals ship to beam him back, he trips a subroutine in the counterinsurgency program, lifting the vent. The commander of Terrakanor attempts to flee the station during a revolt. A message from Smart Commanding Officer Kell informs that all his access codes have been rescinded and the countdown can no longer be halted. After castigating Dukat for his cowardice, the computer tells him to try to die like a Cardassian, leaving Dukat uncharacteristically lost for words, and trapped with the others. Ha ha! Dukat tries repeatedly to deactivate the self-destruct, only for the computer to refuse to accept his access codes. Garrick starts to laugh, judging a spat between them, for Kira silences them both and tells Dukat to explain the self-destruct process. Dukat says that once the countdown reaches 0, the computer will deactivate the main reactor stabilizers, triggering a catastrophic overload. Dax asks whether the reactor can be shut down before the countdown is completed. Dukat theorizes that the reactor's laser infusion initiator can be manually disengaged, but from inside the reactor room. Dax counters that the initiator could be disengaged from control junction level 34, but Bashir points out that with Dukat's access codes rescinded, no one, Cardassian or otherwise, can get past the force fields sealing off ops. Dax further points out that if they could disable those fields, they would have to disable every single field between ops and level 34. They need to find a way to shut down all of them simultaneously. Back in the ore receiving bay, Sisko and O'Brien successfully blow the hatch, which opens to the rest of the station. They try to make their way to ops, but find themselves blocked by force fields. In ops, plans are worked out to overload the power supply to the force fields, and it works, also resulting in the restoration of communications, with the force field affecting the security office turns out to be on a different power system which hasn't been overloaded. Kira immediately explains to Commander Sisko the need to disable the reactor's initiator. He orders the rest of the senior staff to begin evacuating the station while he and O'Brien attempt to shut down the reactor. Sisko tells Jake to head for landing pad C, but Jake refuses, opting instead to help his father and O'Brien save the station. Odo and Quark, still trapped in his office, finally hear Kira inform them communications are back and the force fields are down. However, Odo finds his is still in place, and supposes the Cardassians didn't fully trust their security officer at the time, putting his force field on a different system. Quark, frustrated, attributes this to Odo's integrity, which will get them killed. Previously, Odo had flattered Quark by saying that he was the most devious Ferengi he had ever met. With only 6 minutes left until the fusion reactor overloads, Commander Sisko and O'Brien discover that the main corridors leading to the reactor cold junction are blocked by debris from the power overload, so decide to direct the reactor's energy against the station's shields instead, and attempt to go through a burning maintenance conduit in order to reach a suitable control junction. Commander Sisko orders his son to stay behind in the main corridor. O'Brien passes out, but Sisko makes it all the way to the control junction and starts to implement the plan he worked out with O'Brien. While the commander is busy rearranging data rods, Jake disobeys his father's orders in order to pull O'Brien out of the maintenance corridor, which saves O'Brien's life. Sisko gets the last of the data rods replaced at the last instant. On the promenade, the door to Odo's office finally opens, and looks up to see Quark browsing through the files at his desk. Among these files, Quark is enraged to find Odo's assessment of himself as a self-important con artist who is not as clever as he thinks he is. Then as they walk up together, Odo admits he was just trying to be nice when he praised Quark's duplicity, because he thought they were both about to die. When challenged, Odo recites a list of Ferengi he considers more devious than Quark, starting with the Grand Nagus and even including Rom. Nice. So let's take a look at some trivia surrounding this episode. This is the first episode where we see Dukat express a desire for Kira, something that will return many times in the future, perhaps seen as most forceful in the 4th season episode Return to Grace and the 6th season episode A Time to Stand. In this episode, however, his attempt to impress her is treated humorously, something which displeased on a visitor. According to visitor quote, I would have liked my character to make the point that a few years earlier, Dukat wanting me would have meant that he could have had me. I wouldn't have been able to do anything about it. So it shouldn't have been seen as a cute moment. It was actually a horrifying moment. It would have made Kira feel disgust and panic. To Kira, Dukat is Hitler. She's not ever going to get over that. She can never forgive him, and that is important to me. Kira may have started to see Cardassians as individuals, but she will always hate Dukat. In subsequent episodes, Dukat's longing for Kira would take on a much less humorous tone. The episode builds upon the antagonism between Gul Dukat and Garrick, which was first hinted at in the second season episode Cardassians. It would next be seen in the fourth season episode The Way of the Warrior. Self-defense resembles the Star Trek Voyager episode Worst Case Scenario. In both episodes, the crew trigger a computer program which are unable to shut down, which proves life-threatening. However, in Worst Case Scenario, the program was a holographic simulation that became a threat to the crew primarily due to an accident. In self-defense, however, the program had been placed there specifically to threaten the crew. Coincidentally, in both episodes, the program's creators are Cardassian, although in Scenario, Seska merely adapted a pre-existing program rather than creating one of her own. This episode was the first to mention Quark's cousin Gala. Josh Pace placed the character in the episode's Business as Usual and the Magnificent Ferengi. This is the second time in the series that hidden device or program on Deep Space Nine causes mayhem on the station. The first time was the Asphasia device planned by Dickon Ellick in Babel. Reference rules of acquisition number 75. Home is where the heart is, but the stars are made of latinum. Okay then. So I think this episode is kind of interesting though, and yeah, this episode also is pretty darn tense, I'll give it that, so yeah. So overall, I give Civil Defense 4 warp cores out of 5. Well, anyway, tune in bed as we take a look at the final episode of the day, Meridian. So, until then, live long and prosper, everybody.